We are live, people, with none other than Paul Barnhurst. He's founder and also, the FP&A guy. Has a bunch of followers. Cool guy. You can see from his appearance. Nice beard. I have problems with that word, Paul, but not as much as I do with your last name. So please introduce yourself. Tell us a bit more about what you're into nowadays.
Yeah, so as you mentioned, my name is Paul Barnhurst. Go by the moniker nickname, the FP&A Guy. That was something I used on LinkedIn a few years ago, and it kind of stuck. It's now the name of my business. I have a website called the FP&A Guy. And so I do things just helping people be better at finance and Excel, financial planning, data visualization, all those things FP&A people do. I have a couple of podcasts I do on the subject, FP&A and financial modeling. I also teach some courses, and I create content 6 days a week on LinkedIn.
So I kind of suck at financial planning and finance altogether. I'm hoping to get there 1% better daily. Can you start with why is FP&A important?
Yeah, so the way I like to look at it with FP&A is where it's really valuable is FP&A is there to help a business, one, do their budgeting and forecasting. But two, more so than that, there really should be viewed as a strategic advisor. Someone can help ensure companies are spending the next dollar wisely, right? If you think of accounting, accounting's all about getting the books right. It's all about backward looking. FP&A is all about forward looking.
So with that being said, if we look forward, if we forecast, the past might also be important. What happened before will help me determine what will happen in the past. Is me getting better at forecasting, constantly making bets and evaluating what percent of the time I'm right and trying to go with the scientific approach, test many approaches and become 1% better on a daily basis? Is that a good approach?
Sure. Yes, there's the scientific and always trying to get better at the forecast and looking at historical. But even beyond that, no forecast is perfect. As I like to say, if I could forecast the future perfectly, if I could do my forecast perfectly, I'd be sitting on a beach somewhere because I would have made a fortune on the stock market, right? It's really about the process, planning, making smart decisions, allocating, cash well. And you don't need to be perfect for that. You do need to, there's certain things you need to be accurate on, like your historic head count. Now, you may not be accurate on your new head count. So, and other things, you got to be good enough to, if you're a public company, you need to be close on your numbers or you're going to take a beating on your stock. So there's a level of accuracy you need, but at some point, that extra percent of accuracy isn't worth the additional work. You'd be better served working on other projects and thinking strategically, how can I provide insights to the business to drive value? So I think it's twofold. One, yes, you want to be accurate enough to meet your needs. And two, it's really about that process, going through it and thinking about who do you want to be as a business and what are you going to do under certain situations and scenarios.
I have 4 frameworks to productivity nowadays. The first is adopting the mental habit. So literally thinking that every Monday I'm gonna make a quick forecast of this week. Every first of the month, I'm gonna make a forecast of this month. The second is templating the thing. So I guess, once I have the habit, I can already have the template in front of me and it becomes very easy and it's also ingrained. The third is try to automate it, try to have a bot do it. And the fourth is having AI take care of it. Can you comment on each of the framework, how I could become more financially focused in my business using these 4 frameworks?
Well, I think having a bot do it, that's going to be challenging. You can obviously have machine learning, AI, prepare a forecast. There are tools out there that they'll take your historic and do it, and you can learn from it. But it's really a 2-part process. Even if you use AI, you use machine learning, which what we found is companies that are using machine learning, are more accurate in their forecasting generally. Now, often you have to have a lot of data to do that. So there's, some challenges to be accurate. But at the end of the day, you still need to be able to look at it and use that human judgment So it's not an either or. You can't do one or the other. You need both. And the example is, right, AI machine learning is going to take your historic data. What if you're having the historic data includes 2020? Your business may look totally different now, COVID, right? And so that's where that human judgment and that smart comes in to take what you get from machine learning and improve upon it. Often it can be more accurate than a human, but at the same time, it doesn't have all the context necessary to adjust for some of those things that could have a big impact. And then can you go over the other two again? Which were the other two frameworks real quick?
First is habit. So, and if I can give you a little hand on that one, lately I've been quite big on serotonin loops. So basically teaching my brain, do more of that because you will get a steak. In that case, it would be do more of your finance stuff, do more of these forecasts to be right in my projection and to make more money. So that was the first one.
Okay. So I think, there, as far as habits, the big thing is getting in the habit of looking at your numbers. So data has shown that companies that review their financials monthly have a much better chance of survival than companies that don't. So developing the habit of understanding your financials, understanding your position, and adjusting accordingly is just, it's going to improve over time. And, does your accuracy get better? Yeah, it should. But more than that is your ability to understand what's going on from a financial lens gets better by looking at it and understanding your numbers.
Right. The second one was templates. I guess on that point, we can talk about dashboards and templates. My company's in Hong Kong, so we've got problems plugging it up there on Xerox, but I guess we do. So I guess it would be to have that Xerox dashboard or a QuickBooks dashboard somewhere that I can constantly see it. Maybe when I open a new tab on Google Chrome or as my wallpaper on my phone, so that I can be constantly oriented towards that and block a meeting every first of the month and first of the week. I've done that. I've lost the habit probably because of the serotonin loop that wasn't present. What softwares do you use and what do you recommend in terms of dashboard and looking at your stuff?
Yeah, it's going to be different for everybody and obviously the size of the company. A dashboard can be as simple as something you've done in Excel. You can have it set online so you see it, or Google Sheets. It could also be something you do in Power BI. The key is twofold with the dashboard. One is making sure what you do in the dashboard is valuable. And in an ideal world, you want that mostly to be leading indicators that will result in change, not what was my revenue last week, because that's after the fact. Or the things you can be looking at that if you see them, you'll make a change. You'll be smarter and make it more likely you hit your numbers. So, that's the first thing. Hold on, give me 1 second. Hannah, I'm in an interview. I'll go find you. Close the door.
Hello.
I got to get a sign out front. I haven't had a chance to put it up.
No,
but
that's cool. That's life. That's beautiful.
Yeah, it's all fun. So what I was saying, kind of with the dashboard is, one, making sure it's valuable and meaningful. And the second is really making sure you look at it. A lot of people build them and then you never look at it. So it's finding what works for you, which is different for everybody.
All right. You and I will probably talk after that because, I kind of need you in my business. Talking about your business, what do you charge typically? What do you do specifically? Tell us about that part of your business, the consulting/coaching part.
Yeah, so I don't do a lot of consulting. I do a little bit, and that varies. There's an hourly rate sometimes for most of the consulting. Most of the stuff I do is training. I have courses anywhere from $39 to corporate trainings that, depending on how long it is, could be over $10,000. I have a partner that I do it with. So the price really depends on what people are doing. I have a cohort class for best practice FP&A, and at the moment that's $500, and there's 12 hours of training. So, there's a lot of different price points for people. And then I also do events, webinars, blogs, other things. And those prices really vary depending on, what somebody wants. Be anything, from I've had some stuff where I've done it as few as, a few $100s for something, depending on the effort, up to, again, $10,000. So it depends on what people want and what the effort is that's needed and the visibility and all those things.
Right. Looking at your LinkedIn is quite interesting. So you started in the Navy, you then went in the corporate world, 9 years at Amex, which is quite a lot. That's a lifetime. What made you, and I mean, top companies, right? DigiCert, Gartner, Solera, which also rings a bell. What made you decide to switch and start your own stuff?
Yeah, so really I started building a following on LinkedIn, and some opportunities came up about 18 months ago. A couple vendors had reached out to me. Somebody had asked me about doing some training. Another person had reached out to me with a consulting opportunity. And I remember I turned to my better half, my wife, and I said, hey, I think we can turn this into a business. And she kind of, looked at me at first like, what are you talking about? And we discussed it for a while, and she was on board. And so I decided to give it a try and started it. Oh, I guess it's almost been a year and a half ago now.
Give us some stats of how it's going so far, like how many subscribers, downloads, because my podcast has a bit of traction. I'm not focused on it though, but I'm pretty sure you have something going. Tell us about it.
Yeah, so I have two podcasts, and in the one podcast, we're if you look at Listen Notes, they do some ratings. They rate it top 5% of podcasts. We're doing a new episode typically does somewhere between 2,000 and 2,500 downloads the first 30 days. So we're happy with the numbers. Obviously, we want to grow it. And then the second one just started. We've only done 3 episodes, and the third episode right now is about 1,000 downloads. So it's growing.
Love it. What's the thesis behind the pod? Do you do interviews? Do you prepare for them? How do you find guests? Tell us about the whole strategy there.
Yeah, so I mean, it varies a little bit, but it's generally one guest most of the time. It's an interview, anywhere from 30 to 50 minutes. People can get CPE credit. So if they're a CPA or CMA, they can get an hour of CPE credit for listening and answering some questions. So that's part of the strategy. Guests, some of them come from the sponsor. Most of them I find through LinkedIn or different means. Just go out and look for interesting guests and reach out and bring them in. I prepare all the questions myself. About once a quarter, we'll do a LinkedIn Live where we have some kind of panel discussion that we turn into an episode. And, beyond that, I have the occasional panel discussion. I did one today where I had, 2 guests on, and we discussed some different subjects.
Interesting. How did you get your 75K followers on LinkedIn?
Posting every day for 500 straight days.
Decent. About specific topics in your field.
Yeah. Primarily all around FP&A. Excel is big. I write a lot about FP&A software, best practice FP&A, sharing the podcasts, things like that. And it's just grown over time.
How have you got better at content, which is being entertaining enough, but also educating enough, communicating clearly? How did you get good at these things?
Well, talk podcast, which is obviously content, just practice. I now feel much more comfortable when I first started, where it felt like, very memorized. I struggled. How do I answer quickly somebody's question and keep the conversation going? And with more and more practice, it's become easier. And really, it's the same for content. I mean, you get to the point where you start thinking, okay, what do people want? You can see what does well. You start to get an idea of what they like. And so you can start adjusting your content that way. And and I'm also, learn from others. I'm part of a creators group where we discuss what works and what doesn't work.
You had Tom Hood on the guest. The guy has 700K followers, which is 10x yours. You're 7x mine. How do you get these guys to accept to come on the pod?
For him, he had responded on I think he had commented on something on LinkedIn that I did, and I just sent him a DM and said, hey, we'd love to have you on the show. And he said yes.
So pull, not push.
Yeah. Yep. I am starting to get some pull. I'm starting to get some companies. Like recently, I had someone who's a CEO at a pretty popular company, someone from their marketing team reach out and say, hey, we'd like to be on your show. So I'm starting to see a little bit of that, but 90% of the time it's been me reaching out and finding the guests. I do get the occasional, they come to me, and I'm getting a little bit more of that as the show becomes more well-known.
Right. And why would a CEO want to come in? Are they like good with numbers and forecasting?
Yeah, I mean, I think the reason they want to be on the show, is twofold. Is, a lot of them, they have a product or something that they think my audience would be interested in. Two, they want to build their brand. I'll get people reaching out who want to build their business. They're a fractional CFO, and so they want people to know about them. And so those are usually the two types. Either they want awareness for their business, or they're hoping they can get some clients from being on the show. I think it's one of the two.
Because in my case, yeah, my follower base is 10x or 7x lesser than yours. I could add massive value for fractional CFOs, for example, to teach them how to get new clients with outreach, which is what I do. But yeah, I kind of suck with numbers, so that I wouldn't be able to add any value on that front.
Got it.
Your side, I mean, these mastermind groups of yours, it seems that they've helped you quite a lot to gain these skills. What's your strategy behind that? And are you forming your own community?
Yeah. So, as far as the group that I have and strategy there, it really just kind of came out of us on LinkedIn. Finance is a pretty small community on LinkedIn, and we all know each other. And so we started chatting, you'd have messages, you'd talk to people. And we said, hey, let's get a group together and we can share what we think's working, what isn't working. And so that's been, fun. And I've made a lot of really good friends that way. I know a lot of the great finance creators. I know almost all of them, and most of them, almost all of them I'm friends with and have met personally. Some that are out there, I haven't had that chance as it continues to grow. And so I'm a big believer in any type of community, which I think LinkedIn is, obviously. It's really about getting to know people and giving back. And so I look at it and say, okay, what can I share and what can I learn from others? And that's how I see LinkedIn. That's how I see other groups that I'm part of.
What have you accomplished this year so far, and what are you about to accomplish in these next 2 quarters?
Well, I've grown my beard longer, and I'm going to do that in the next 2 quarters. So that's important. I'm hoping to get it long enough that I can have the Viking look going, but I got a little bit more to go. But on a serious note, so, something I was really, I'd say, proud of, or, never thought I'd be able to accomplish, never did I think we'd do something like this, is I did a conference in March where we got 10 vendors to come in and sponsor it. And we got about 1,000 people to register for it. It was all digital, 2 days, where we allowed people to come share their software with people looking for an FP&A tool. So that was quite an accomplishment. It was a great learning experience. I'd never done anything like that. As far as the next 2 quarters, say one of the big things I have coming, we'll mention 2. There's a few, but one, I'm teaching a class for senior finance leaders in India through the Economic Times with a few other people. So I'm really excited about that. That's a new experience, something I've never done before. And then the second is I'm getting ready to release year 2 of the FP&A Market Guide, which is around software tools. And that's a ton of work because it's a very crowded market. We've not interviewed, but done the initial survey for over 30 companies, and we're narrowing it down to a list. And then I have to do a write-up on every single one of them.
Yeah, I've seen that on your LinkedIn. Year 2 is upon us. Good work right there. So what's next for you this year? What do you want to accomplish? What are your financial goals?
Yeah, for finance goals, it's continuing to grow the business. At this point, I've been able to basically replicate my revenue of what it was before I left kind of corporate America this year. And so it's continuing to grow that, and not just grow it, but really for me, it's finding ways I can do it smart, where I can get to the point that there's a certain amount of passive income, there's certain income that leverages up. And so I can have a little more financial freedom and flexibility. That's really kind of how I look at it from a standpoint, is getting to that point where most of my money either comes from training, podcasts, those things I really enjoy, trying to avoid doing the things I find painful. And as far as, goals, like I said, finishing the market guide, continuing to grow the training. I'd like to get another digital course out there. I'm looking at some other partnerships, and there should be hopefully some announcements here end of Q3 on that one. That's kind of under wraps at the moment, but I hopefully have an exciting announcement here in a month or two. And then big one is continuing to grow the podcasts. I really enjoy that and finding fascinating guests.
Good answer. You were at the Dollar General headquarters a month ago. Yesterday, I was building my Munger GPT to have Charlie by my side even when he flies up there. What have you learned from that fascinating company that I think Berkshire invested in?
Yeah, training Dollar General was a great experience. What I was really impressed with is it was clear they had a good culture. They had good leadership in their finance. You could see that they liked working with each other. They supported each other, and they were really there to learn. I was really impressed with the group. The guy who brought us in, Doug, he was great. It was a really good experience. And I got to learn a little bit about the company, and I'm amazed how big they've become. I didn't realize how many stores they had. I think it's like over 20,000 stores now, right? They're huge. They're Fortune 100, and they've done a great job of growing and building a very strong brand. It's impressive.
Very impressive. And just the underlying thesis behind the brand of, like, oh, everyone was like against made in China back in the days, but they still continued, right? They still saw the data in their customers. Most people didn't have the supply chain for that, the contacts, the network, the financing to start such a business and to import a crap load of made in China stuff. But yeah, customers wanted it and they took advantage of that. In Canada, we have Dollarama in Quebec, and that business also like skyrocketed to the roof, and apparently they flew under the radar. I mean, Walmart could have been some kind of competitor there, but it's quite impressive to see that, yeah, demand has remained quite high. Supply has remained low. And yeah, they really scaled that way. They're one of my favorite companies / stock. Last but not least, I told you about my Munger GPT, which is really useful for like just truisms and first thinking principles. When or how far do you think we are from a CFO GPT?
Well, there's a finance one that's been developed, finance GPT. A CFO one, I mean, I think what you're going to see first before necessarily a CFO GPT, which you've started to see, is an analyst GPT, right? Rarely where GPT is going to be great for finance professionals, obviously helping write emails, helping prepare decks, do analysis. Where I don't see GPT in the near term, and who knows in the long term, we'll see what happens. So I don't see him taking over the CFO part of managing the board, managing the investors, managing the relationships with the other C-level executives, raising capital. That's a relationship business. People want to feel comfortable with the person. Yes, GPT can help with the numbers and the deck and a lot of the stuff that we used to have to do ourselves. And I think that will get better and it will continue to improve. But I don't know that I see a full CFO GPT coming anytime soon. But definitely we're seeing finance GPT, and it's going to change the way people work and allow them to be more productive. And if people aren't exploring it, they're doing so at their own risk.
Because yeah, CFOs are more entrepreneurial, a bit more creative, the best of them. But if I feed it all my annual reports, all my company data, a chat can possibly do an equal, if not better job, and can be like almost instant. You can answer my questions at 1 a.m. if I need, send me reports. And if I API it to a live source and stream of data, to my public stock and so forth, I think it can be pretty neat.
Agreed. It can do some amazing things and definitely help, and people should be using it. So I'm excited to see how it continues to improve.
Love it, Paul. Well, thank you for showing up today. Where can people find out more about you?
Yeah, so if they want to learn more about me, one, they can reach out to me on LinkedIn. They'll find me there, Paul Barnhurst, the FP&A Guy. And then also I have a website, thefpnaguy.com. And then the other two is if they're looking for a good podcast to listen, they can find me on any of the platforms. There's Financial Modelers Corner.